everybody, my name is Connie from Minerva, and today I'm going to be taking you through one of Minerva's own sewing kits. So the sewing kit we're going to be looking at today is of the Wardrobe by Me's Boxy Raglan. Now, the sewing kits that Minerva offer are basically a really easy and approachable way to start with any sewing project, because they provide everything that you're going to need for that project in the kit itself. So it comes with the pattern, your fabric, all of your notions, zips, anything like that will all be included within that package. So for example, with this Boxy Raglan, all you have to do is pick one of the 5 kits available, and each kit will have a different fabric for you to choose from. So I went with this Minerva core range fabric, which is a French terry, it's loop back. It has a lovely blush pink base, and then these kind of abstract flower patterns over the top. And then it also comes with a matching rib for you to be able to do the cuffs, the neckband, and also the waist. The Boxy Raglan is described by Wardrobe by Me on the front as being a classic sweatshirt with raglan sleeves, rib cuffs, crew neckline, and a hemband. It's quite an oversized fit, and just for reference, I did mine in a size 12, and I would say I'm classically a size 10, so I wanted it to be even a little bit more oversized. And as it says on the front, also you've got 2 lengths, 3 different necklines, and you can either do it short or long sleeve. So I've obviously done the longer sleeve variation, and then I've also gone with the rib around the hem, which kind of sucks it all in to make that even more boxy shape. It is quite an oversized pattern anyway, but I did mine in a size 12, and usually I'm a size 10, just to give it even more of that boxy oversized look, which I personally love. So during this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly how I made this Boxy Raglan, but if you have any comments or questions as we're going along, make sure that you put them in the comment section down below, and our Minerva team members will get back to you as soon as possible with their answers. And if you're interested in making up the Boxy Raglan, all of the Minerva kits with the 5 different variations of fabric will be linked down below, and you can purchase through Minerva. And with that said, I think that's everything, and we can start with the sew along. Okay, so here you can see I've got everything that comes in the kit. So firstly, I've got the pattern itself, and on the back it has all of the imperial and metric measurements depending on what you want to use, and also your fabric requirements. Before purchasing, also, if you didn't want to buy the kit but you just wanted to buy the pattern separately, you can actually see on the website from the pictures how much fabric is needed for each pattern variation, so that you can see beforehand how much fabric you need to buy. I've then got my ballpoint needles. These are specifically ones for stretch fabric. I've got my thread. I've got my ribbing, which will be going around the neckband, the cuffs, and the hem. And then I've got my meadow loop back French terry here. Really pretty. Love these colour combinations together. So the first thing I'm going to do now is cut out all of my pattern pieces. Now, if you want to, you can pre-wash your fabric just to make sure, you know, when you wash it for the real time, once it's made up, that it doesn't shrink at all. However, I haven't done this because I'm doing it a bit oversized anyway, so it doesn't matter if it very slightly shrinks, but you can pre-wash if you would like to do so. So now I'm going to cut out all of the pattern pieces which are included in here, off the paper first, and then of the actual fabric itself. So when cutting out the rib, the first thing I like to do is actually just snip along the tube of it, because it's a tubular rib, so it'll come like this. And I like to snip along the one edge, just so that we can make sure that we're making the most efficient use of the fabric. And when it comes to cutting out our pattern pieces, we've obviously got the grain line as usual, but we've also got the direction of the stretch. So you want to make sure that when you're laying it down onto your rib, that you are making sure that the direction of the stretch is in the right place. So if I just pull my rib, you can see instantly that this way is not stretchy, but this way is. So the direction of the stretch for this one would be this way, so that when we're sewing it up, the areas that the rib is included on, like around the yoke of the neck and the wrist, is super stretchy for us to get on the jumper really easily. So I'm just going to snip up there and then lay the pattern pieces down. Now that we've cut out all of our pattern pieces, including the rib, the next thing that we need to do is move on to the actual sewing, so the exciting part. However, one thing to note with this pattern is that it is made exclusively with a 7mm seam allowance, which really means that you need to sew it with a stretch stitch, such as with a overlocker. So I'm going to be sewing the entire thing with my overlocker, as that will equal the 7mm seam allowance. However, when it comes to sewing on the neckband, the rib and the hem, I am going to go over with my machine first on a longer stitch, kind of like a basting stitch, and then go over with the overlocker. Because as you know, once you've sewn something with an overlocker, it's very difficult to unpick. So just to make sure that I'm completely happy, I will be doing a sort of basting stitch beforehand. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew the front sleeve seam to the front raglan armhole, matching those notches. And to do this, I'm going to pin them first and then very carefully go through my overlocker with the entire thing, making sure to pull out the pins before I go through the overlocker, because that will be quite a dire situation if I forget to pull them out. So that is our first step. Right, so I've got my sleeve here and it's a little bit difficult to see, but always remember that the back of a sleeve has 2 notches and the front will only have 1. So we're matching the 1 notch with the 1 notch that is on our raglan front. I didn't actually do a notch, I just marked it with a little bit of a blue pencil. So I've got my blue mark here and my blue mark here for my front notches. So I'm just going to match those right sides together and then sew them on my overlocker. Right, so now you can see I've done that. There's my overlocking there. And the very next thing to do is do the same, but with the back. So I've got my back here and I'm just going to lay it right sides to the front. And we're basically just doing the exact same thing. So we're matching the notches of the sleeve, but on the back this time. So like that along there, going to pin it and sew the exact same way and do the same on this side as well. So I'm just going to pin those and then sew them down with my overlocker again. Now that we've done that, we can sew the side and the underarm seam up. So we're doing really the same thing, just sewing together along that side there, pivoting at the armpit seam and then doing the underarm. So I'm just going to pin that down and then go along my overlocker, doing the exact same thing to both the right and the left side. Now you can check the sleeves and adjust them accordingly. Right, so now we can move on to steps 3 and 4. So with this, we're going to be adding on the cuffs for the sleeves, and then we're also going to be adding on the hemband. So I'm going to do the cuffs first. So what you want to do is take your cuffs. So you should have 2, of course, and what you're going to be doing is folding so that the shorter sides are together. And if you have a wrong or right side to the fabric, then obviously make sure that you're sort of adhering to that on both sides of the fabric. With this rib, there isn't really one, luckily, so we are all fine. And with the rib, you have two kind of options, because you can either, as you've been doing for the main body of the fabric, do an overlock stitch along, or, and I think this is what I'm going to be doing, is do a straight stitch using your machine needles and your thread, just along there, very narrow one, 7mm, and then iron it open. And the reason I'll be doing it with a straight stitch is because it makes a little bit less of a bulk on that seam, because if you think about it, the overlocker is doing those both together, then you're folding them outwards, and it does make a little bit of a bulky seam. So I am just going to be doing it with my straight stitch on both of those seams, like here and here, which I've already just pinned down to show you. So I'm going to be doing that 7mm and then ironing them outwards. So now you can see I've done that. So all I did from this kind of position of sewing them both together is fold in half and then basically turn the whole thing in on itself so that you have that cuff shape. So you've got both of your raw edges there, which you've ironed out, nestled against each other, and then you've got your cuff just like that. So I've got two of them, and then I will show you now how to attach them to the actual sleeve. Right, now with your sleeve and actually attaching the cuff, what I like to do, just because the cuff, as you can see, is not exactly fitting flush to the sleeve itself, because you want a little bit of a rib pulling in. So what I like to do is just mark with a contrasting colour pencil or chalk, whatever you have to hand, where halfway is. So my halfway point is there because I've got my seam there, so I just mark halfway on the fabric. And then if you really want to be very accurate, you can also mark the quarters, so going that way, pull it open like that, and then match the little mark that you've just done with your seam on the other side, so just like that. And then I'll be marking there at the quarter mark, and also there at the quarter mark. And then you can do the same as well with your cuff. So I've got my cuff here, so there's my seam there, and then if I mark exactly halfway opposite it, pull it out so you can see my halfway point is there. So I will mark that with my blue pencil, and then I can also mark my quarter as well. So doing the exact same thing that you did with the sleeve, but with the cuff this time. So there's 1/4 and there's the other one. So then what I like to do is put the cuff over my sleeve like this, and then just match all of those points that you've just done. So we're matching the seam to this underarm seam here, and doing the same, matching the dots that we've marked on, just pinning into place, because obviously we need to stretch as we're sewing so that the rib brings the cuff in to have that lovely professional cuffed finish. So I'm just going to pull as I sort of pin like that, pin all the way around, and then we're going to be sewing firstly by machine and then by overlocker. Now at this stage I am going to take it to the sewing machine and just sew 7mm again, and the reason I'm doing this and not taking it straight to the overlocker is just because I want to make it absolutely perfect before I take it to the overlocker, because the overlocker is kind of the final step and there's really no redeeming the sleeve sort of once I've gone in with the overlocker. So I'm going to go 7mm in from that edge, and I'm going to do it on quite a loose sort of basing stitch so that if I do it wrong I can really easily unpick it. But if I'm happy, then I will then take it to the overlocker and finish that seam off. So just going to go just, you know, normal straight stitch now, and then do it with the overlocker, and then do the exact same thing with the other sleeve. Okay, so now we've done that for either sleeve, we can do the exact same thing for the rib for the bottom, for the hem. So we've got a hemband here. I'm doing the tight rib, so mine is slightly shorter, but I have just folded that over. So if at any point I wanted to do the boxy rib in the future, I've still got that option. So with our tight rib, we've got the two pieces here. And just like with the sleeve cuffs, what we're going to do is sew just like we did exactly the same thing, 7cm along here, 7cm along here, press it outwards, then turn the whole thing in half, and then we're really going to be doing the exact same thing as with the sleeves. So we're going to find the half and then the quarter marks and mark that also on the bottom of the jumper itself so that we can see exactly where we need to pin. So around our 7cm and then overlock that again. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is just sewing the 7cm along here and the 7cm along here, and then ironing open. Okay, so now that we've done that, we move on to the neckband, which is probably the most difficult part of the project. So I've cut my neckband out here, and you would have either chosen to do a neckband A or neckband B. I've done B. So we've got our neckband here. And just to double check and to make sure that I've definitely cut out the right sort of neck shape here, to match with my length of my neckband, what I like to do to make sure it's absolutely perfect is actually use a measuring tape and measure round the entire neckband of the jumper here along the raw edge, and basically just see in centimetres what that is. So what I normally like to do is just put a pin in where I'm starting. So I'll probably start at this seam here, and I'll just go along and very accurately measure, not stretching the fabric at all, just laying it down like that. Just measure the entire way around to see how large the neck is. And then what I like to do is find 85% of this amount, and that length is what your neckband in the rib should be. So 85% of this length here is what my neckband should add up to, because of course the neckband is a rib and it's got to stretch a little bit and hold sort of in a funnel shape the neck here. So I've done that and I have worked out that it's correct. If you also wanted to extra check, what you can do is just fold the neckband over like this, as you would when you're sewing it on, and just pin it like that, same place as I've just put the pin in, along that seam, and then gently stretch it how you would when you're sewing it on, pulling it around like that. And you can check that way visually to see if you've definitely got enough of the fabric. So just pulling it gently as you would be when you're sewing it on to create that stretch, and just go the whole way around and check that it lines up here at the end. And you would normally leave your 7mm seam allowance. However, with rib like this, I actually normally don't do that because it is stretchy anyway, so it should work well with you just sort of doing those two ends together. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is sewing the two shorter ends together, because it's really the exact same thing as with our sleeves and the hem, because we're doing those two ends and then we're folding it in half to make that edge, and then we're doing the raw edges together. And also, just to point out, when you're doing this sort of seam along here, what I like to do is actually do it in this curve shape like this. As you can see, I've just drawn it on with some fabric pen. And this is to make sure that when it gets to the outer edges, the shoulder kind of edges of your seam, that it doesn't pop up and kind of create a ridge, but it lies smoothly and makes that funnel shape that you want along your neck. And to make this happen, I just draw it slightly in that sort of curved triangular shape there. So straight line there, straight line there. And that just makes sure that you don't have any gathering at the shoulder seam. And just to show you, that's really very small. It's about 7mm just in from that. So I'm going to be sewing it there and there on my straight stitch machine, ironing open as I did before, and then ironing the entire thing in half. And then we will move to the next stage. There we go, so I've done that. That's where our seam was, and I've just opened it up, ironed it out, and then folded the whole thing over and ironed that. And now what we're going to be doing is the exact same thing as we did with the other cuffs. So we're going to mark our halfway point and then our quarter points, and we're going to do the same thing on the neck here. So just remember to work out the centre back on here. You would just fold those two seams in half like that. And that is where your centre front is, and then from there you can work out the rest. So I'm just going to mark all of those on and then pin into place. Now that I've pinned that round completely, the next thing I'm going to do is take it to the machine, and then on a very long stitch, in case it's wrong, I will go around the entire thing, just at my very narrow 7mm seam allowance. And then if I'm happy with that, the next stage will be to overlock it. And then we are almost there. And then the final step is to top stitch along with your ballpoint needle as close as you can just to the ribbing, and this just makes a really professional finish, and also make sure that the overlocked edge is trapped under the fabric and not making any bulk. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you would like to see more tutorials, pattern hauls, sew-alongs, then you can follow along by clicking on the button above this video next to where it says Minerva, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can press subscribe. And if you do end up making this sweatshirt or any of its variations, I would absolutely love to see it. You can sign up to create a free Minerva account where you can add pictures of your makes onto your profile, add a little description and tag the products you use. This way I can see what you've sewn and other makers can also interact with you. Don't forget to leave any comments or questions if you have any, and I'll see you soon. Bye!